See what I did there? Okay. Wow. So we were talking. Yeah. Horrible. We can edit that out.
Now I know what my biggest failure is.
Coming on this podcast. Welcome to the Living Artist Podcast. I'm your host, Preston M. Smith. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Living Artist Podcast. I'm Preston M. Smith, at PMS Artwork everywhere on internet land and socials. I want to thank you for landing on this podcast. Whether you're a professional artist, just getting started in the art world, a collector of art, or just consider yourself a creative person, this podcast has something for you. I like to think of it as a fun way to rant and talk to other creative people about living the life of an artist, surviving and getting ahead in the art world, and enjoying your life. But most importantly, not waiting until you're dead to make it happen. All right, let's get started. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's also creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Hopefully the lights are on and everything looks good, right? Oh, she's recording. Fuck you. All right, so tell me about your drive up today.
405, man. Yeah, the thing is gnarly. I try to stay in Hermosa Beach as long as I can, and you think that a Saturday morning at 10:30 is a good time to get on the 405, and it was a nightmare.
There's never a good time to get on the 405. That was the first thing I heard when I was an actor. When I came down to town, I was doing a bunch of extra work, and they were like, "You know why they call it the 405, right? Because it takes you 4 or 5 hours to get off it."
It's about right.
Here, let's make sure we got that. Actually, keep that because I might put a little. You can just do whatever we want.
You're live with PMS Radio.
Yeah,
it's Tarzana, California.
Welcome back. We are live. So first of all, Merry Christmas.
I was noticing that.
In case, for those of you who are listening, it is late February. It's the last day of February on a leap year, and we have our Christmas tree up. So
good times.
Merry Christmas,
times.
Everybody. Wow, we started
a couple more months, and you may as well just leave it up.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a year-round tree. I think. So, what do you think?
Nice.
It's nice.
It explains so much about you.
Yeah, right. I just feel more comfortable with the lights, with the twinkling lights, Mike.
Right.
Thanks for being on the podcast.
You're welcome.
Thanks for braving the traffic all the way up to Tarzana.
Thanks for having me.
Now you know what I feel like in reverse coming down to show.
That's how I was soothing myself the whole way. I was like, God, Preston does this so much more often than I have.
Yeah. Well, you've got a great community down there, and why would you leave if you don't have to?
They call it the bubble for a reason.
They call it the bubble. So Mike Collins is he's an artist. He's also the owner of ShockBoxx Gallery in Hermosa Beach. He's a man of many hats. He also has his own practice. He's just an all-around crazy guy. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your origin story? The superhero origin story of Mike Collins.
Oh.
Like, how did you get into the art world?
How did I get into the art world?
What gave you the audacity?
It's funny. Everything that I've ever gotten into, where I feel a passion and a drive to like a calling to seriously get into it. I always come in from I'm an outsider. So there's always this outsider perspective. And before even starting something like an art gallery or getting into the art world, like if I go back to being in high school and skateboarding, right? Like my friends and I started skating, and there were these like older guys that had a ramp, but maybe they wouldn't let us skate except, certain hours or only on a certain day.
Oh, wow.
Kind of like the typical tribal thing. So
right.
We just built
like
a big...
Like surfing, like Point Break.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we just built a bigger ramp.
Oh,
You know,
nice.
like if you aren't going to let me be part of your scene, I'll create my own scene.
There you go.
And I think with art, it was actually a little bit later in life. Like I was already a psychologist. And had you asked me, say in 1998 or 1999, Mike, are you an artist? Are you creative? I would have said, no, I'm not creative. Turns out that wasn't true.
Right.
It was just something that had been dormant with me.
Right.
So there were, I was a psychologist sitting in my office, Hermosa Beach. I've got this office that has a really nice view of the South Bay and a nice ocean view. And it was...
I've seen it via Skype.
There you go. Don't tell people about our Skype relationship.
Yeah, right.
And so...
Edit this out.
So it was February of 2006. And Southern California was on fire. There was a fire in Malibu. There was a fire in Palos Verdes. There was a fire in Anaheim.
Unlike today.
Unlike today, not hot. I mean, there were literally wildfires.
Just the wildfires.
Just several wildfires.
Right.
And those create the best sunsets you can imagine.
That's true.
And there was this particular sunset during a psychotherapy session that just absolutely stopped the world. Turned my office orange. The client that I was sitting with, we both just started talking about the sunset. And we went out on the deck of my office, and everybody that had a roof deck in the South Bay was standing there. Like, it was really mesmerizing.
Wow.
And it, every sunset for about a week, it just kept happening. And there was this point where I started feeling like I should paint it. And I kind of laughed at the thought because I wasn't a painter.
Right.
But it kept coming week after, or session after session, you know, like night after night, until finally one night I had this thought like, gosh, you know, I'm telling all these people that they should follow their instincts, you know, or do something different or be bold. And so I'm going to paint. And I bought some canvas from Aaron Brothers, you know, like a kit, right? It came with like 3 8x10 canvases and like 9 colors of paint.
Most people who buy those don't get through that kit.
That kit, yeah. And I proceeded to paint 3 of the worst freaking sunset paintings you've ever seen in your life.
Yes.
Like, they were bad.
Awesome.
And I'm friends with a guy named Rob Havasey, who's a really successful surf artist. And I called Rob. This was before camera phones, right? So I couldn't like send him a picture of that easily. And I called Rob and I was like, dude, I'm trying to paint those sunsets, and like, do you have any tips? And he said, well, don't paint what you saw, paint what you felt.
Ah, yes.
And had this piece of cardboard, a little bit of wet paint left over from my last failed experiment. And I just busted out this different, almost like a Van Gogh looking crooked, blurry sunset experience. And man, I signed it and stuck it on the wall.
Nice.
Because like, there it is. Like, that's what I was trying to do.
That's it. And now done.
Yeah. And everything I painted after that, like, there was just this desire to put it on the wall. Like, I just had to put it on the wall. So first it was my house. And then there was this local benefit for the Surfrider Foundation, and they were having an art show. And I just called the lady that was putting it on. I didn't know who she was, but I was like, hey, I see that you're having this surf art show, and I'm a surfer and I'm an artist. So I'm a surf artist, like my buddy Rob Havasey, and let me in the show. And she said, well, you can't be in the art show, but we have a silent auction. You can't be in
the art show.
Yeah. So she let me put my piece in the silent auction. And
nice.
and
this is great. I love
this.
Yeah.
And I put it in. It was this like matte finished, like student level bad acrylic painting of a wave.
Mm-hmm.
And I just like come in there like I'm the man going to be in this art show. And then the stuff that was really in the art show was like high caliber stuff.
Right.
And I was walking around asking the dumbest questions ever, like to this one guy's painting. I'm like, she's like, how did it get so shiny? Like, did you put like a finish on it or whatever? And the guy's like, no.
He's like, get away from me, kid.
Like,
You're bothering me.
He goes, I used golden acrylics. Like, maybe you should try that. So I'm like,
there you go.
Like, I need that,
So just asking questions.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. And I've always been that way.
Yeah. That's amazing. I love the progression. It's what everybody should be doing. You had the seed planted, and then it kept coming up in your mind, and then you acted on that, and that led to something else, and that led to something else. You started asking questions, and pretty soon you're like, boom, you're doing it.
Yeah. And I think the skill in it, or not even a skill, just sort of what everybody I know that we run into in the art world, or successful people in other disciplines. Right? Yeah. They're not afraid of no. And they're not afraid of looking bad, and they're not afraid of failing, or they're not afraid of whatever the hard work it's going to be to get there. And the reality is, like, as I started saying, I would have told you I wasn't creative. But once it started happening and once I sort of got back into that scene, like if I go way back to junior high and high school and skateboarding, like I was definitely no stranger to a spray paint can, you know, and would help decorate the ramps or the skateboards or the community, like I was expressing myself creatively. It just was maybe with a different medium.
Nice. I think that's what a lot of people do, though. They put up roadblocks and they think that they're not creative. But if you look back over your life, everybody's creative. As a kid, you're born creative. It's just like over time, it kind of gets beaten out of you a little bit. Yeah. So that's cool. What about ShockBoxx? So ShockBoxx is, it's a small art gallery that I own in Hermosa Beach, of which you're a key person in our program and how we run things. Thank you, man.
And the way ShockBoxx came about was sort of like the same thing, like building a scene, right? Maybe 4 or 5 years before we opened ShockBoxx, Hermosa Beach had this political moment, right, where there was an oil company that was going to try to drill a really large oil field in the middle of Hermosa Beach, actually right behind where ShockBoxx is, which is in our tiny little industrial area.
Right.
And my friends and I are the people that spearheaded the campaign to stop that oil company. Oh, wow. And there was this other thing that happened during the campaign, which obviously we stopped the oil company, but it became a community movement.
You're like, the story would have been a lot different. So it happened and we all moved.
Yeah, it happened and we all moved, and ShockBoxx was a lie. So it became this, we started this thing called Keep Hermosa that became a community movement and an organization where kind of the ultimate thing was this vote where we voted to ban oil drilling, and we were victorious in that 80% to 20%. So coming out of it, we had this kind of like 80% of the community that was engaged and that wanted to work for some different things and some better ideas and to transform that exact area where they were going to drill for oil.
Right.
So you have that going on. And the campaign became really artistic and really creative. And there was a lot of people involved in it that were making signs or graffiti or stickers or slogans or hats and banners. And a lot of our fundraisers became art shows with silent auctions.
Oh, nice.
Right? So I was keeping true to my silent auction artistic beginnings.
There you go.
But what came out of it, we did this, some other people that were involved in the campaign put on like a oil protest art show about 2 months before the election. And it was so well attended. Like the community was just like, we want things like this. So shortly after the oil vote, but when I still had the, the ability to pull that lever of what the community, where they would show up, I put together a small group art show in this big yoga studio in Hermosa Beach. And it was like, I think 300 or 400 people showed up, like it was just packed and everybody was like, yeah, let's keep doing this. Right. So one thing led to another, and the location where ShockBoxx is, I found out that I could make a play to rent that.
Right.
There were some people that were in there that weren't paying their bills, and the landlord was eager to get them out. And I let the landlord know that I would pay my bills, and
you wouldn't.
And I wouldn't keep it as a meth lab. And he offered it up. And so I called Laura Schuler, who's a friend of mine, and said, hey, Laura, and she lives right by there as well. And I said, Laura, I found this place. Like, do you want to share a studio with me? Because at the time I thought I had just found a lockout studio. And she came and checked it out. And when we started digging around and cleaning it up, it sort of revealed itself as a gallery so much more than it did as a studio. So we kind of thought, okay, it'll be our studio, but we'll also have art shows, and we'll kind of do this thing. But it exploded. Like the very first show that we did, it just was so well attended and sort of blew up so loud.
And partially because you'd already built that community.
Yeah, they were hungry for it.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it immediately turned into a gallery.
Nice.
And her and I, like, we hadn't met you yet at that point, but...
Right, we met at LAA at Gallery 825. Oh, we didn't, not met, but we first...
We were both members there
conversation.
Yeah. And Laura and I, our mission for it very quickly was to not be like a local, just, pier paintings and starfish paintings, like provincial art gallery, but because of our involvement in Los Angeles Art Association and with Brittany Davis, she has a huge role in that. I think we met through.
That's probably how we met. Because Brittany used to do a bunch of pop-up shows all over LA. Yeah, and then she was a BG for a while.
She was doing
at Bergamot. Sorry.
Yeah, Brittany was doing those pop-ups, and I was a part of a couple of those, and then I was part of Los Angeles Art Association, as was Laura. And she and I said, look, if we're going to do this, like let's try to put Hermosa on the map as a legitimate art location, right? Where people would come from the LA art scene and come. And so that's where you got involved. And that's what we've been doing ever since.
Yeah. I think the first time we talked to you, I was doing that show where we're pounding penises into I was working with Katie Brightside, and we had a painting collaboration where I took a painting and she used to sew these felt penises, and then we were just pounding them into the wall and having everybody get involved. And then I think you guys came up to us during that show and talked to us, or maybe it was the show after that. But
well, I'm gonna rewind it a little bit, but yeah, it really. That's the thing that you could do with a lot of your paintings as I look at them is paint something and just let people glue penises to them.
Exactly.
They look so much better.
That's kind of where I'm going into. No! Shots fired, everybody. Yeah. No, that's true. Just paint them and then let people destroy them in one way or another.
Preston, it was before that.
Was it before that?
I think so. You did a show at Bergamot. I think it was a 4-person show.
That's right.
Betsy Inzenberger, you, Mark Yellen,
and Bridget.
Yeah.
I can't. Oh man.
Ezard, I think. I know
I remember her last name, but yeah, Bridget. Yeah.
And
oh yeah, that was a good show.
So crazy. So I was either poked my head in that show, or maybe I went to that show, and I already knew Brittany.
Yeah.
And ShockBoxx was like becoming, like, I don't know that we had a show yet, or maybe we had just had one, and Brittany had said, because I was asking her about you and Betsy, and then Brittany said, oh yeah, you should meet these guys. They would be great. And you should also meet this woman, Amber Goldhammer. Like, she would be great.
Yes.
Because remember, Amber had a studio.
It was like right across the hall. Yeah.
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 And
I left real estate, by the way, for a studio.
Yeah. That was
foot traffic walking by that place. Whew.
So I walked out of Brittany's place, and Amber happened to be unlocking her place as I was walking out.
Nice.
So I was like, oh, hi, I'm Mike. Like, Brittany said I should meet you. And she also told me about some woman named Davia King. And Davia happened to come walking up because Amber and Davia were having a meeting.
Oh, wow.
And that's when Laura and I had a few very small shows in Hermosa Beach.
Yeah.
And I said to Amber and Davia, I have a gallery in Hermosa Beach. And if you guys ever want to do a show, like, we could make that happen. And they were like, yeah, for sure. And so that's when we were like, oh man.
I like it. You're just peddling it. I've got a gallery in Shock.
Yeah. So they did a show.
Oh, yeah, I remember that show. That was a great show.
Yeah.
They basically plastered all the walls inside, graffitied them, and then they had actual paintings hung too. That was your 3rd or 4th show? Maybe 5th? Their
show was in October, and the first show that we had at ShockBoxx was in April.
Yeah.
So the first show, we turned the gallery over before we really did anything. Like, we hadn't cleaned it up yet, and we turned it over to 2 local graffiti guys and just said, do whatever you want. So they were top to bottom.
I think we talked after you'd done you were on your 2nd show or something like that.
Yeah.
And I tried to submit a severed head nude painting. I think I might have been a little too early on for that, but we did the Abstract Badass show. I think that was my first show with you guys, where it was the Ed Moses.
Moses, we're coming for you.
We're coming for you. Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was in September of the first year.
That was a great show.
Yeah. Ed.
And I like how you're referencing other LA artists too.
Oh, for sure. That was Laura and I, we one of the documentaries I love watching over and over to inspire me is The Cool School.
I don't think I've ever seen that. Oh, I know.
This interview is over.
I'm just going to be on. If I would have been nodding my head and be like, yeah, and then you were referencing it and I had nothing.
Yeah. There's this really cool documentary called The Cool School.
Okay.
And it's the story of Ferris Gallery.
Yeah.
Which was on La Cienega. And Ed Moses was one of the original guys there, as was Ed Roche.
Right.
As was Baldessari, some of those guys. And
isn't he on the cover of Artillery right now?
He is on the cover of Artillery right now, of which we have an advertisement.
Plugging Sarah Svetlana's solo show coming up at ShockBoxx Gallery. What's the date on that?
March 7th. Opening reception 6 to 9.
March 7th. Oh, okay.
And the show will run all month.
I wonder if Sarah would do the podcast. A little promotion.
She will.
Sarah, if you're listening, come on the podcast.
She will.
Okay, cool.
I'm her representative.
You're like, I will make her.
So there was something about the Ferris Gallery and that documentary that inspired what we did at ShockBoxx. And it's just the fact that there were these 5 or 6 guys with a gallery where for a couple of years they didn't sell a damn thing.
Right.
But they were doing these like cutting edge, like just pushing the envelope art shows. And they all had an opportunity to split to New York because that's where the abstract movement was.
That's where the scene was.
And they were like, no, like we're staying in LA, man.
Yeah.
We're going to do this thing. And they were just like chest thumping, like just assholes towards one another.
Right.
You know?
Talk about audacity.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Like one guy would do a show and the other guy would be so pissed about it that he, like, I forget which one it was, but like literally one of these guys like backed a motorcycle up into the doorway of an art show and like started burning rubber.
Oh, wow.
You know, to just like smoke out the show because he was so upset. And I was like, God, like I wish we could have hung out with those guys.
That probably worked to their advantage too.
Yeah.
Like, oh man, you never know what's going to happen.
Well, yeah. And with the LA art scene being so accessible, like, how many times have you seen Ed Moses in person or shook his hand or went to his show, you know?
Oh, I photobombed him many times.
and so when we did the show, there was this, like on the one hand, it was just absolute nod of respect to Ed Moses, right?
Definitely.
Like we see you, dude, and we're going to keep this up. And then the other one was, I hope he finds out about this and shows up and either like appreciates it or just declares it the most ridiculous thing he's ever seen. But one way or another, it's like Ed, like, you know,
it's like no press is bad press when Ed Moses is involved.
Right. But that was the show that took us from whatever we were doing and made us realize that we were going to be able to have an actual gallery that was going to pull high caliber artists in.
It's been cool to see. This was back before you had the program, which the program is a select group of people who you're representing at the gallery. I'm lucky to be one of those. And some of those people are doing solo shows. Sarah's one of those members too. She's having a solo show coming up in March. But it's been interesting before that to see the progression, even in the space, how the space has evolved, listening to you talk about where the space was, how it was originally a smaller space, broke down the walls, all the work you've done in there, opening it up, watching the storage kind of blossom. And now you got the back room of ShockBoxx, which is great. It's kind of like a green room for people at a show. If you're at a play, there'd be a green room where you can hang out. It's kind of like that, but you also have some of the program artists rotated in there and other artworks you like, couches. People can go back there and chill out a bit, take a little breather from the main space.
Yeah.
And it's just cool, man. It's become a scene.
It has become a scene, and that, you know, the program's such a huge part of that scene, right?
Yeah.
For anybody that's interested in becoming part of a gallery, right, or becoming part of an art scene, like here's exactly what you do, right? You show up and you see what the gallery's about, and you submit for a group show, and you hang out and you meet me and you meet Preston and you meet the people that are the regulars. And you're probably going to be in the group show, right? And because as a gallery owner or as a person that's part of it, like say the Hermosa Beach art scene, you recognize who's showing up. You know, you recognize who's supporting, and that's the foot in the door. And for the program, especially, you know, when Laura and I took that spot, we put our money and our blood and sweat and tears into that, you know, and sometimes you sell art and sometimes you don't, but you have this belief in it where, you know, I'm willing to shell out a certain amount of money every month just to have a really cool fort, you know, a really cool treehouse.
For sure.
And so the way ShockBoxx has evolved, you know, from day one when we rolled it up, that was us.
Yeah.
And then you get to the point where you have a couple people like, hey, I know how to fix a door jamb, right? Or I know how to do this. Or when Dennis Dugan did his solo show,
right,
he had this idea, like he's like, have you ever thought about covering that open space up there? I was like, well, yeah, I have, but that's phase 5 in the budget. And Dennis is like, I'll do it. You know, so he covered it, right? Nice. So there's this part where we're all pitching in, and then when the back became available, that was a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And at the same time, the space next door became available. That's when my buddy Kevin Sousa took over, and you know, he's creating this music space where he's locking out, and that's where they're rehearsing now.
And they're going to be recording in there as well, aren't they?
They're going to be recording, and then ideally they would be able to have live performances in there. That kind of leads to the back box, and the program is that when we decided to have the program, there were these group of artists, you, Sarah, Theodosia Marchant, Scott Meskel, Kim Swank,
Laura Schuler, Dennis Dugan, that it was obvious to Laura and I at the time, those were the people that were our family in the gallery that were showing up all the time. And then the style of art that we were doing all has a relationship. Yes.
And if you look at the first time we did like just a straight up program show, I don't remember if we called it The Usual Suspects.
I think it was The Usual Suspects.
And all Laura and I did was send out an email to you guys and said, hey, show up. Bring what you want. You're in this show. And we didn't curate it at all, other than we knew who we were inviting into the show.
Right.
And when we hung it, if you go from your abstract stuff to a mescal sculpture to an abstract piece by Sarah to what Theodosia does or whatever I was up to at the time, you can see the relationship. Like there's a level of quality, sarcasm, right? Like darkness or edginess, like we all definitely have a vibe that we're riffing off of.
Definitely. Also, I think some of the people, this plays into what you were saying earlier too. It's also semi about paying your dues. I mean, there's a lot of people you're saying as far as showing up, getting part of a community, also building a body of work or a certain aesthetic, all that comes into it. Those are the kind of non-tangible things that if you're looking at a piece, you wouldn't see, but all that works into that show and the group of program artists. But I think that's also important. I think for the people who are listening out there, for younger artists coming up, there's a tendency nowadays to just want to like snap their fingers or push a button. And like, I'm an artist, let's get out here and do that. And that's great. But you also do need to go through some of the proper channels, which is, first of all, build a body work, kind of develop your voice, and then start getting it out there. I think there's a tendency nowadays to go, Instagram comes first. Right. I don't think that really works.
Right. There's young artists too that I forgot to speak about in the program, like Emerald Paget.
Right. Well, she's like 18 or something.
She's 18 now, but she's a great example of that. The first time she showed at ShockBoxx,
but she also has a body work.
Yeah, but at the time she didn't.
Did she not?
Like that red painting that's up in Love Hurts right now.
Oh, fuck me.
No, I mean she did. She was working, but she wasn't showing. And the first time she did show, she had submitted, and her neighbor called me, who was a friend of mine, and said, "Hey, this young kid submitted, and if you could get her in the show."
But she did have that kind of naturally had that kind of aesthetic. She fit in with that group
for sure.
And that also kind of brings us to the new stage, or one of the new stages of ShockBoxx, which is these competitions.
Sure.
Like I came to you with this idea of putting together some competitions, juried competitions where people from around the country, even or internationally, could submit, get their work seen, and get into a group show, maybe get some featured wall space, win some cash prizes. And what have we done? Four or five of those?
I think we've hung 4 of them.
Yeah.
And we've got 2 calls up right now.
Yeah. Fifth's coming right now. It's going to be done it's going to be during in the next couple of days or so. And then we've got the Not an Art Fair, which I'm excited about.
Yeah.
But that's been cool, man. It's been great to see people from, like we had somebody flying from Chicago, New York, from Texas, and some people winning some prizes and getting their work out there. That's cool to see that kind of balanced with the other shows that you're doing, the program artist shows, like Sarah's show coming up. It's kind of extending opportunities even further outside of not only Hermosa Beach and LA, but out into the rest of the world. Right.
It's been an absolute positive for the gallery. It's been an absolute positive for the people that come to the gallery. So if you have like you have the usual 30 or 40 Hermosa locals that are going to show up to every opening, no matter what. And they've noticed that when we started they didn't realize it was the cafe calls.
Oh,
but when we started to put up those group shows, people started to talk about, hey, it seems like the bar just jumped up again. Like you guys have elevated the quality of art that are in the shows.
Definitely.
I feel like that shift started to happen last year around this time when we weren't sure if ShockBoxx was going to stick around. There was the trouble with the gym up the street and just kind of,
I forgot about that.
Kind of some event stuff in the cities working on some code changes, but okay, like let's do solo shows because this thing might be over.
Yeah, that's true.
And so Laura did a show that was the level of art that she put in that thing was next level for her.
Yep.
For sure.
Well, she created a bunch specifically for that show.
Every piece was brand new just for that show. And then I did the same thing, right? Mm-hmm. I put up an art show that was so raw and vulnerable and challenging for me that I felt like as an artist, I put myself in a different place. And then that was followed very quickly by your show.
Yep.
And then Scott Mescal's show. And what we noticed with the solo shows, it was kind of building on Dennis Dugan's show the year before.
Sure.
Like we've had great shows in there.
And shout out to Dennis. He sold that show out.
He's got a crowd. That's when you came with the idea for these cafe art calls. And I think you and I both had some hesitation around that because obviously if you're going to go on a website like Cafe, you're going to have to charge people a submission fee, which is something that we had never done. And we've guarded, kind of closely against being a pay-to-play gallery. Like we've never let somebody rent the space to have a solo show or rent the space to put up their own art show.
Well, that's a really important distinction between what actually pay-to-play is and what just a submission fee is. I mean, most galleries nowadays charge a submission fee to run the administrative side of it. Also, for us, we're giving cash prizes out to people. But like, I know I get approached by galleries all the time. I've had one in France recently who's trying to get me. And it's like, we're going to give you a great discount. It's like $2,000 a month to be a part of this. But we've got this great list of contacts. That's a pay-to-play gallery.
I agree. And I know for us, with the way that we put up a cafe show, if you get in that show, first of all, we are going to jury that thing and curate that thing so tightly that you're in a high quality art show.
Exactly.
And we're not cramming these things in salon style, which is another model, right?
Definitely.
You pay to be in the show instead of pay to submit. And so that's really easy. Then we're just going to put 150 pieces from your toes to your 6 feet above your head in the show.
No.
Right. And so I'm proud of the quality of the show. The fact that just about the same time we were invited to be a part of Artsy and that we're able to put those shows online.
Oh yeah.
And put those artists that are in those shows
that's
online.
Big because that's very exclusive. You can only get, if you're not familiar with Artsy is a platform online and it's kind of like an online marketplace. It's one of the first, but you can only get on there through a gallery, through a legit gallery. And Mike recently became part of that. Early on in the year?
Early on in the year, when we first
2019.
opened. Yeah, 2019. When we first opened the gallery, Laura and I contacted Artsy and said, "Hey, we want to be on Artsy." And they replied, "No.
Show us what you got first.
Come back in a year." They literally, they were literally like, "Come back when you've been a gallery."
So they're curating galleries too.
Yeah. And then the next time we approached them to be a part of Artsy, it just wasn't in our budget. Yeah. Because you have to pay to be on Artsy. And we're like, yeah, we can't afford that yet. Then they came back to us about a year after that and said, "Hey, we're going to start focusing on emerging galleries in Los Angeles, and we've got a platform that might work for you." Nice. And when they presented their case, it was something that seemed like at the time, and with Cafe coming along for us, that it was going to be in the budget.
Yeah.
And so that's how we got on Artsy.
Well, and that also is a huge plus for anybody who's submitting to these competitions too, because you're putting those shows directly on Artsy too. So not only do you have a chance to get in front of a live audience at ShockBoxx in LA, potentially sell your work, but you can also do that online through Artsy. Yeah. And that's reaching an international audience.
For sure.
Yeah. So that's great. Speaking of solo shows, I just wanted to plug you real quick. Oh, you got a solo show well, first of all, Mike's first show was called The Funeral Party, which was amazing. I think you're going to be using at least a selection of those pieces in your next show, right?
I am.
Tell everybody about it, where it's going to be, which gallery it's going to be, and what the dates are.
Right. So let me rewind just a little bit on that. The solo show is going to be at a place called Gallery 825, which is the physical space of the Los Angeles Art Association. And if you're an artist, I guess you could be a part.
By the way, I'm sorry to interrupt, but if you're a young artist in LA trying to get into a scene a little bit, check out Los Angeles Art Association. They give you some good opportunities to kind of network and just get your feet wet. And also for not only emerging artists, but people like you, for example, and a lot of people who are established, give them an outlet to be able to showcase their work in gallery shows and solo shows.
It is a great place.
It's hard to get a solo show there, by the way. I know, I've tried. I'm no longer part of LAA, but how long have you been there?
I think this is my 4th or 5th year. And when I became a part of LA Art Association, it's like you said, everybody wants a solo show there. Yeah. And everybody
thinks they're ready too.
Yeah, everybody thinks they're ready, and you submit, and then they tell you no. So you think you're going to quit, but you re-up for another year. Yep. And they have really great group shows. I had a great experience.
And people come out.
Yeah. The first time I applied to a group show there, right after they accepted me as a member, I got rejected. And, in your mind, you're like, screw them. They don't know what's going on. But then if you go to the show, you understand exactly why you weren't in the show. And it's not necessarily that you got rejected. It's just that whoever was curating that show had a vision, and their vision's going to play out on those walls, right. Which is, I think, a powerful thing to do as an artist, especially a young artist. Like for us with our cafe calls, if you see who the jurors are, and those calls have links to those jurors' websites or those jurors' Instagram. Do some
research on the jurors.
Do some research, like check out how they paint, or what it is that they're into, because that'll give you a good clue about what may or may not make it into the final cut of a show.
Well, not only that, but another little parallel with those curated shows and the cafe ones that we're doing. I've had the opportunity to be a juror on a few of these, and I know some of the other program artists have, and some other people not in the program. It's really interesting to get that perspective, because you're so used to, as an artist, just submitting to these things and then you get rejected. It gives you a different perspective. Like you're saying, oh, there's a lot of strong work that doesn't make it into the shows. Just because, first of all, you've got a number of jurors who all have a different perspective or a different aesthetic that they're judging based on. But also, sometimes it's just not right for the show. And it doesn't mean that your work is not good. And a lot of times there have been artists who've submitted who haven't gotten in, who've gotten into another show where their art was good for. So rather than taking every rejection personally, you just have to, it gives you a different perspective to go, oh, maybe I just wasn't right for this show.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Back to my show.
Sorry.
Well, it's funny.
This is the mic interview.
When you started talking about that, I just realized that one of the things I'm so passionate about now that I do have a gallery is promoting the gallery and promoting other artists and curating art shows. So there's these two lanes now, right? Where part of my creative desires are just being filled hanging another person's art show.
And that's
being
interesting.
In that jury process. But
do you feel like your art has suffered or grown because of that?
Both. So when we first opened the gallery, the second show we did, Laura and I did a show together, and we challenged one another to only do works that were different than anything we'd ever done.
Nice.
Which has been something we kind of ask all of you guys to do, right? At the gallery. And so we did a show.
Get outside your comfort zone a bit.
Yeah, we did a show and it was cool. But then we started putting out all these group shows, and sometimes I would have a piece that would work in a group show. Sometimes I would sit out. Sometimes I would make something specific for the show. But what I realized when I went back and started thinking like, okay, I'm going to start painting for me again, was I was a mess, because I had your work in my head. I had Scott's work in my head. I had Dugan's work. I had Sarah Svetlana's work. And I was trying to paint like all of you guys. Like I had lost the practice because I was not painting daily. And so then the work that led to the funeral party was something that I had never really shown people. It was related to my own addiction and recovery and sobriety. And I've been sober now for almost 24 years.
Congratulations, man. That's awesome.
Thank you. And maybe like 10 years ago, I started making these first they were drawings, and then they were paintings that were related to sort of what sobriety was like for me. Right. Yeah. I'm so far past the part of sobriety where alcohol is going to be a problem for me.
Right.
Like I'm not trying not to drink anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm very much an addict and an alcoholic.
You're not having the drunk dream anymore.
No, none of that. But I am. What I do understand as somebody who's been sober for quite some time and also a psychologist is that a lot of the personality traits and a lot of the sort of obsessiveness and just like the grind and the drive that goes into becoming an alcoholic. If you remove the substance and you put that towards something that's a little more positive,
yes,
like, I need that addiction, because without it, I don't know what I would be up to.
Well, I've said this a little bit before, and we'll get back to this, but I've also quit drinking about 5-6 years ago now.
Right.
And it's kind of like a superpower, man.
Yeah.
I always say this a lot, because we're so bombarded by the idea of drinking being so ingrained in our society. But when you just get that out of the equation,
right,
you have so much energy at your disposal to focus on other aspects. So.
Well, right. And I think the energy was there before, right? But
right.
you'd either numbed it, or
yes.
it was just in pursuit of finding the perfect cocktail,
right?
Or avoiding the perfect feeling or the worst feeling.
Definitely.
So I had these drawings and paintings that were really kind of personal and vulnerable to me. With this, a lot of them had a girl in a pink dress and like a canary and a cage, and it kind of dates back to when Amber and Davia were doing their show. We were going to do an addiction show right after that, and I had a really big piece on a drop cloth that I was going into the gallery and working on the floor, like when we weren't open for Amber and Davia's show. And it was going to be in the addiction show. And when the two of them came in to load out their show, Amber had said, like, what's up with this thing on the floor? And I said, oh, it's just, I'm going to nail it in the corner for the addiction show. Like, I was not taking it seriously at all. And she had challenged me. She was like, why don't you stretch that and put it on the wall and take that seriously? Like, so I did. And she was absolutely right. Like, as soon as you see it stretched and on the wall, it's just this used drop cloth. It takes it on a different meaning.
It does.
And I put that in the addiction show, and then I filed it away. And that's what turned into part of the impetus for the funeral party. Was just
so that was kind of marinating this whole time in the meantime between that point and your
and show. Like a year and a half later.
Yeah.
And when I started to kind of venture into the idea of doing a solo show, I had a couple of different paths I could have gone down. But that's where, for me, having watched all of those group shows and all those solo shows that went before me, I was not interested in a show of like, hey, these are my 12 best paintings I've ever made. I wanted to like do what I'd been asking all of you guys to do, which was take a humongous risk and shock people, right? Try to do something different.
And it was also a very cohesive show. I mean, you could tell it had a voice.
Right.
Like I've always liked your work a lot, but it was when I first came to that show on opening night, I was like, damn, like this is really cohesive. Like this tells a story.
Thank you.
It paints a picture. And it almost felt like you had really just, maybe you discovered your voice here and there, but this nailed it down.
Oh, that was it.
Yeah.
That was it for sure. And the
it's
difference,
a powerful show.
Yeah, the difference between standing next to, one painting in a group show or certain paintings, like the difference between that and standing in the middle of that show when the roll up came up, like it was interesting. I spent most of the night, when I get nervous, I stand on my ankles. Like I twist my feet like a little kid, put my hands in my sleeves, and I could just feel myself just like recoiling like that, and it was because a friend of mine, Brent Broza, who's shown at the gallery.
Yeah, he's great.
Can we cuss on your show?
Oh, I already have been.
Okay. Yeah. And so he comes into the show.
My ears just might bleed a little bit.
And was literally like, he's just like, what the fuck, dude? Like he was expecting a bunch of abstract paintings.
Yeah, right.
I kind of kept it all on the down low for people. And so anyways.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that was fun.
What an unveiling.
That was fun.
That's so cool. No, and that's what it felt like to me. I mean, I'm in that gallery all the time, but when I saw that, when Mags and I walked in, I was like, this wasn't a knock. It was just kind of like, holy shit, this is better than I expected. And
Thank you.
And that's not, and I already liked your work. So that's definitely a compliment.
So the show coming up at LA Art Association is May. It's May 2nd to June 5th.
Nice.
The opening reception's on May 2nd.
And that's on La Cienega.
825.
825 La Cienega.
La Cienega, hence the name, Gallery 825. Which, by the way, I don't know if you know this. Did you know it's only a block away from the original Ferris Gallery?
No.
Yeah. So that's like where the whole thing started.
Shit, that's cool.
It's always cool to be up there.
Is there any sort of correlation? Did they plan to have that there because of that scene? That's been around for a while.
Well, Ferris was in the 50s. And I think Ferris was there starting the scene.
Yes.
That's sort of now like Designers Row.
But I mean, were they trying to continue it?
I don't think they've been there that as long.
Okay.
We'd have to find out.
Because now a lot of the big galleries in La Cienega are in Culver City.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's moved south.
It's on its way to Hermosa. Baby.
Yeah, exactly. Making its way.
Yeah. There's some, that southern part of La Cienega where Graphades is. And they've been a huge support of the gallery. And down this corner, you ever go to Nova Color?
Yeah, for sure.
So cool, right?
And I used to live in Culver City back in the day before we became Valley folk. And I used to go, I would exclusively shop at Graphades. I love that place. And the guy, what's the guy's name? Mike, right?
Mike, yeah. Mike and Robert are both from Hermosa.
Yeah. And they've been in a lot of the shows.
Yeah. They both come to, I would say, every show or, darn near every show.
Yeah.
And they're really supportive of the artists that show at the gallery.
This podcast has been brought to you by Graphades.
Nova Color, are you listening?
Yeah, right.
And so the way that the show came up I'm trying really hard to talk about my solo show right now.
Talk about it, man. Sorry if I keep derailing you.
So every year.
So anyway, what were we saying, Max?
You guys can't see this at home, but we're getting our picture taken hundreds, if not thousands of times.
Yeah, we hired some paparazzi.
Preston is a very good-looking man.
No.
So every year,
not if Max has anything to say about it.
The members of LA Art Association submit to have a solo show the following year.
Yes.
And I was sitting in a pretty good opportunity to submit this year because I had done the funeral party.
Right.
And I was able to photograph it in the gallery. Right.
So still the percentage of getting in there was probably pretty low. Because many people submit to that.
So many people
Quality
do.
Artists.
And I think, some of the solo shows there, if they have like an installation aspect to them, and if if it's a little bit something different than just art on a wall, I think you might tilt the odds in your favor. I think that might have been what happened with mine, and I think they like
conceptual art.
Yeah, Peter had mentioned, Peter Mays, the director of 825, had seen one of the pieces that I had. It was in Out There last year. And Peter really liked that it was on used drop cloth. Like there was something about it that was so different.
It's great.
Yeah. So I'm feeling really challenged right now because what they accepted was the funeral party. And they allow you to switch it up a little bit, but you got to stay true to that theme. And so for me, I've got this like, okay, I've done that show. I don't want to wear it out.
Right.
I don't want to wear my people out that might come to that show. But I'm also aware that the LA Art Association crowd, none of them have seen it.
No, so it's going to be a completely different audience.
Yeah, Scott Mescal's hammering me to change it up some. So
I was going to ask, are you going to add any pieces?
I do. I have a few pieces, two of which I don't know that even you've seen.
Oh, really?
So I'm gonna stick with.
Don't show me. I want to see him live.
Okay. So you're coming.
I'm coming.
Nice. The coffin will be there. It has to be. I think that's a huge part of why they accepted it.
Yeah, for sure.
In the last.
Well, I don't know about that, but that's gonna be a nice piece.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I have some new stuff I'm working on.
Cool.
And so that's in May. But seriously, what I'm even more excited for right now than that is Sarah's show. That's opening on March 7th.
She's
ShockBoxx.
Getting some press right now.
She is.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's we put an ad in Artillery.
Yeah.
She has an interview that'll come out in Asymmetric magazine from Leah Perino.
Very cool.
Been a great friend of the gallery and a great artist in her own right.
And we've had her during a couple shows as well. Yeah.
Sarah is she's in the program. And what I really appreciate about her being in the program is she's kind of the poster child of what we were trying to accomplish with ShockBoxx in the beginning, right? Is that we're on Instagram putting out art calls. Some new artist who had never shown in a gallery from another part of Los Angeles showed up to be in that addiction show. And her work is just, I mean, so powerful.
Yeah.
Right. And she shows up in a way where she's going to participate. You sort of can't deny that she's there. And what she's done to her work from a couple of years ago to now, right, is just level after level of awesomeness.
Yes.
And to watch her...
She got on the fast track.
She put herself on.
Well, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, she did the work. I'm not taking that away from her. I'm saying when I was talking earlier about paying your dues, she basically paid her dues on steroids.
Right.
She was just all of a sudden, she's all over the place. She's creating a bunch of work. She's getting a lot of shows. Didn't she have another solo show?
Yeah, so she did. She's funny. She'll talk about it when she comes on, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But when she decided that she was going to paint, she quit everything else she was doing and she paints. She paints full time.
She does.
And she is not afraid to approach galleries. And she's got work in a gallery in Australia. She has work in a gallery in Israel.
Nice.
She's got work in Art Space Warehouse, which is a great place to have work and be represented by. And then the best part of it all is she calls ShockBoxx home. She did do a solo show upstairs at Tag Gallery earlier. And then we started talking about doing it at ShockBoxx. And what I really appreciate about this show is Sarah has gone underground with work that a lot of it's starting to pile up in the gallery right now. So I've seen it,
nice.
But it's not on Instagram. It's not on a website. Like, you're going to have to come to the show to see this stuff first run. And
that's great, because so many people, I think, avoid shows now because, why do I need to go to a show and I can just see the new work on Instagram or on Facebook? That's cool that she's kind of keeping the mystery alive.
Yeah. I think artists have done that since the beginning of time, right? If you're working on a solo show, you try to keep it low key, but there's
a lot of pressure nowadays to give teasers and tastes of what you're doing. I'm glad she's doing that.
I think there's pressure to give teasers, but I think a lot of us have so much such a dependence on the like button.
Oh my God.
And it's like, if you make a mark on a page and send it out, it's like, do you guys like that? Should I keep going in that direction? I learned watching.
Don't analyze me, Mike.
You do get a lot of likes. You know who Crayola is? Greg Simpkins.
Yeah.
He's the best. And I've gotten to know him a little bit, and I watched him via social media and in person get ready for a solo show a few years ago. And I knew he was working on it. And I know that he just went absolutely dark on anything new.
Nice.
Kept his social media presence alive. Hey, Flashback Friday, or you know what I mean? Like, he kept his fans engaged.
Yeah.
But knowing he was working on it, watching him keep it under wraps, and then walking into his solo show the night that it opened, you walk into this like, whoa, I've never seen this.
Right.
Which was obviously something I tried to do.
How did he do this?
You could watch him do it and wonder how he did it, right? Like, the guy's a genius.
Yeah, for sure.
But Sarah gets an A+ on what she's hidden,
Well, and when we were hanging the last show, I got the opportunity to go in the back and watch her starting one of her big pieces.
Oh, the big, yeah.
Yeah, I've seen a little bit of the progression, but I'm excited for the show. It's going to be a great show.
Yeah, I predict that big one will still be wet when we get it on the wall, because that's she's coming down to work on that one tomorrow, and she's still got some work to do, but it's going to be good. Nice.
I want to shift gears a tiny bit and talk about I don't know, this podcast is a little bit it's for everybody, all levels of artists and creative people, but for some of the younger artists out there or emerging artists, I was curious as to what maybe one of your biggest failures was and what you learned from that, because I think so many people are afraid to do what Sarah's doing, which is just having no fear. I know when I had a year, the year that I quit my job and went full-time as an artist, I was like, you know what, this is the year of no fear, because this is my one life. What do I care if I get rejected another time? So I just started going balls to the wall and getting my work out there to as many places, interviews, grant programs as possible. And
you're, I don't know if your listeners know, but you make a living as an artist.
Yeah. For the last 4 years, I've been making a living.
That's impressive.
And I waited tables for many years before that. And I cut my teeth in the art world for sure. But yeah, it's hard. It's hard to make that transition into to going full time. But do you have anything that sticks out in your mind? And it doesn't even have to be necessarily as an artist. It could be as a gallery owner. Maybe it could even be as with your practice. But what was something that you went for and failed at, and maybe you learned something from it? If you need a little time.
I know that's such a great question. And I know that the worst thing for a podcast would be like, 4 minutes of dead air. and I want to answer it.
I can sing a song.
Yeah. Do we have a commercial break?
You know what? Let's take a pee break and we'll be back with Mike Collins.
Right after this message from Graphics.
Yeah. Welcome back to the Living Artist Podcast. This pee break has been brought to you by Golden Acrylics. See what I did there? Okay. Wow. So we were talking, horrible. We can edit that out.
Now I know what my biggest failure is.
Coming on this
podcast.
Yeah, so we were talking about failures and biggest failures or failures in general, what you've learned from them.
Yeah, I don't feel like I've ever failed. And I know that I've done things that are regrettable or that I've had hard times, but if I just kind of take stock of where I'm at in my life, everything that I've been through has led to this.
Right.
Right. If I make it specifically about ShockBoxx and what we've done, we started so fast, and we started in an area where it was kind of like the Wild West. You could just do whatever you wanted, or it seemed like you could do whatever you wanted on the street that our gallery's on.
You could for a while.
Yeah. So we just opened up and started having art shows, and there was a freight train coming that I was unaware was coming, right? But just across the street and down a bit from our art gallery was a gym that went out of business and had some problems with some neighbors and ended up filing a lawsuit against the city on their way out of business. And we were named in the lawsuit for having opened without a business license.
Yeah, they kind of threw you under the bus. That's me saying that, not you.
Yeah, not having event permits and some things like that, all of which were true. We weren't getting event permits. I didn't have a business license. I didn't get a permit for the neon sign that we have, but it was just sheer ignorance.
Right.
I was just being an artist, and this thing was happening organically, and it felt totally blessed by the community. And the night that it all came crashing down, Bob Dobb was having a solo show.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, Bob's a Hermosa guy, but he's also he's a known
he's a big
lowbrow pop surrealist.
Definitely.
And there was a crowd, one of the largest crowds we had at an art show, and the whole thing got shut down. And if you look at what had happened, what we were building in the year and a half leading up to that, but really if you think about the shows that had happened in the 6 months leading up to that, we had Dennis Dugan's solo show, right? And Dennis is a Hollywood guy and a great artist, and he,
big time director.
Well, yeah, but William Turner was at our show, and some other sort of notable
you had
Hollywood people, but
big momentum. At that time.
And then during Brent Brose's photography show, Roger Gassman came, and Crayola and Dabs Mylan. So suddenly we're like, damn, and Bob comes right after that. And we did the show with Patty Astor from Fun Gallery fame, who lives in Hermosa and is actually a big part of the gallery.
Look her up. She was part of the New York scene with Basquiat, Keith Haring, Fab Five Freddy.
She's part of it, she might have started.
She might have started it.
Exactly. And so we just and all of that still exists, but we hit what felt like was going to be a speed bump turned into a brick wall. Yeah. I think that was the moment in time when Laura backed away, and had to go in a different direction, which I totally understand. And we thought things were over. And there's an example of we could be talking about that as a failure, but that's when, you just go, okay, I've got a black eye right now. And that's when you came closer into the fold. That's when Scott came closer into the fold. Leah, Perino, Sarah, all the Theodosia, Kim, all the program artists just stepped up and said, hey, we've got this thing. Let's save this thing.
It was interesting too, how you were talking to me privately about people stepping up. And it almost seemed, it was interesting how it kind of semi-organically happened.
Yeah.
It's all those spaces just kind of got filled in.
Yeah.
But yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So that would be an example of at least personally, the way I've viewed challenges is I just don't see them as failures. Even if you look at my alcoholism and recovery, there was some dark history, with my relationship with that stuff. And the reality is I'm not a psychologist unless I'm an alcoholic, right? Probably not painting again unless I'm an alcoholic and a psychologist, right? I'm probably not going to sink my teeth into a fight against an oil company unless I sort of have that tenacity and drive that comes from the same personality that could develop and the dependence on alcohol. So,
I'm the same way, man. It's easy to look back on it and be like, oh, well, okay. Now that I have this objective perspective, looking back, hindsight's 2020, everything happened and made you who you were now.
Yeah.
Maybe in the moment, I've always known you to be a very level-headed guy. You almost have that. No, seriously.
Yeah.
Like
that's
nothing,
my public
nothing
persona,
rattles
Preston.
my.
Yeah. I project that.
Right.
Yeah.
You're doing it well. No, but maybe you just have that. You've developed that skill to be able to, in the moment, know that this is not the end. This is not the final chapter. It's just going to lead to something else.
Sure. And really, when you get in a fight like that, it's great publicity.
It is.
If you're in that battle and to bring home the failure thing and make it a little bit like a refrigerator magnet, or to sound somewhat like a therapist, the truth of the matter is that for me, the failures are when you miss an opportunity,
Yes.
like you have to go for it. I know you do. We were talking about Sarah. She does, like if you see somebody that you want to meet, go shake their hand,
Right.
go, hey, I'm Preston and I want to be in your art show, or I'm Preston and this is who I am. Right. And just, there's nobody that's beyond saying hi to or beyond trying to dance with.
And you don't know what seeds you're planting along the way. You might get rejected in the moment, but art is a long game. So it's going to come back around at some point. Maybe somebody you submit to, you weren't right for the moment. 10 years down the road, they're going to say, hey, I remember this guy or this girl came in. Yeah.
The LA art scene is so accessible. There was that article in the New York Times recently about artist-driven galleries and how they're kind of bucking the system. And there was something in it about the accessibility. And if you just look at like who we know now, based on being a couple guys that were in some of Brittany Davis's pop-ups,
right?
And then we meet each other, and you even talk about having the involvement of LA Art Association. I was in a critique group there, and somebody in the critique group knew Andy Campagnon, and we invited her to critique our art show that was the result of our critique group, and she came out and critiqued that, liked A Piece of Mine, and said, "Hey, do you want to put this in the Lancaster Museum?" It's like, yeah.
See, that's it.
And then and then when I'm in that show, Jason Jin and Boleslav Rov are out there, right? And they're in the show, and we know them from ShockBoxx. And then you kind of think about Bill Turner showing up at ShockBoxx. I had met him a year earlier. Was just in there, kind of starry-eyed, looking at an Ed Moses show at Bill's Gallery, which is one of my favorite galleries. In the world. Yeah. And he had overheard that I was trying to open up this little spot in Hermosa, and he's like, "Hey, come back here in my office and talk to me about that." And the guy gave me like an hour of his time.
That's amazing.
And just wanted to hear what the hell I thought I was going to try to do, and he's got this smile on his face the whole time. And he's like, "God, that reminds me of me in Venice." The early, like that guy, my recollection of the story anyways, was the first spot that he lived in. And the landlord gave him a deal or Bill kind of negotiated it. Like, look,
an origin story.
If you'll ride this with me, right? And I'll show you my books.
Yeah.
When I do better, you do better.
Yeah.
And let's build this. And, he's anchoring Bergamont Station. And what I love about my experience of him is that he is so encouraging for ShockBoxx to grow. Right.
Yes.
For young artists, for young gallerists, for people in the game. Like he has this.
Which
spirit.
you wouldn't think maybe.
I think some people would resist, helping other people. But Bill has that philosophy like you and I were talking about. Yeah. The more people that you help out on your way up and the more people that you promote, you're going to promote yourself and you're going to promote your thing in the process.
I just had an episode where I talked about not being a jealous artist, how it blocks you from everything. It blocks you not only from your own growth, but from a community of people that you're developing.
Absolutely.
Because all those people end up admiring you. You admire them. You end up being your peers and your coworkers down the road. That's amazing, man. It's funny how much you've accomplished in such a small amount of time with ShockBoxx. But I wanted to talk about bringing this to maybe some of the younger artists or people who are submitting for the shows. What are some like best practices? Not necessarily, I mean, we're kind of coming off of the failures saying, not necessarily failures, but what's like maybe a horror story of something not to do as an artist if you're submitting for a show? Like as a gallery owner, having that perspective.
There's if you're going to submit to a gallery and that gallery has gone through the process to create a submission process, right? Mm-hmm. Don't try to subvert the submission process.
Right.
So for example, right, you're making these calls for us on Cafe.
Yeah.
And that takes you a certain amount of time. Mm-hmm. And we're paying to be on there.
Yes.
And the reason why we're using it is, number one, to reach artists from across the country. But then number two, we've got 3 to 5 jurors that are going to jury this show.
Through that platform.
Right. And the way the work shows up, it's ready to be juried.
Yes.
And there's this just, if you have trouble with the platform, email us and we'll help you with the platform.
Yeah.
But don't spam our inbox with, hey, here's all my stuff. Select which one you want and let me be in the show. Like you're not going to be in the show.
I've had about 3 of those today.
Right. You're not going to be in the show at ShockBoxx.
Yeah.
And you're probably not going to be in anybody's show.
And sorry, but ShockBoxx is probably one of the most forgiving galleries out there. We try to be pretty cool with the submission process.
Totally.
We respond to everybody.
Yeah.
Like we're encouraging. But imagine if you're doing this to a gallery that has a reputation of not being so cool with artists. You're pretty much blacklisted at that point.
Yeah.
Like they're not going to look at you.
Yeah. There's a way to be new.
Yeah.
And to approach a gallery, obviously not knowing what you're doing.
Sure.
And if I can sense that, I'll put my arm around you, really try to help you out. There's probably 2 or 3 times a month, I'll get contacted by an artist that says, hey, can I come by the gallery? I want to show you my stuff. Like I've never shown before. Like, will you give me some feedback? Absolutely. Like all day long, I'd love to do that. Try to submit via the submission process. That being said, I think that every show that we've put up, we've been contacted by somebody that says, hey, the $30 is kind of prohibitive for me, but I'd like to be in your show. Is there any sort of stipend or scholarship or whatever?
Right.
And
like didn't we have one from Iran or something?
Iran.
Yeah.
We had an artist that just showed In Love Hurts, from Long Beach that hit us up that way. And, there were like 3 people on social media that were flaming us for putting our call on Cafe.
Right.
And I replied to one of them and said, hey, if this is a problem, just send me a message. Like, let's talk about it. And that person...
Don't troll me.
That person didn't reply, but this other artist said, hey, I saw what you just wrote, and I'm actually going to hit you up on it.
Nice.
And she showed me some of her work, and it was for the Intergalactic show. And the work that she showed me may or may not have been right for Intergalactic, but it was perfect for Love Hurts.
Yeah.
And I just said, hey, you want to be in the next one? And she showed up. And then it's like she showed up with 3 or 4 friends.
See.
And that's the way you show up, right?
There you go.
And so the other part of like, what advice would I give to a new artist is when you do show up, and let's face it, like most of us as artists might also have some anxiety or, like not be the most social of all people.
Right.
Come find somebody, right? Like come find me or come find somebody that looks like they're there all the time and introduce yourself. Like, let us know you. Because the reality of any show that we've done at ShockBoxx is that there's always somebody, and usually 3 or 4 people in those shows that are in the first art show they've ever been in.
Yeah, that's true.
And so, I feel like we're a great place for an emerging artist.
I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
And that's also another thing. Don't be so short-sighted. Just because you might feel like you don't like what's happening right in the moment or for a specific submission, don't burn that bridge before it's even started. Right. You don't know what's going to come of it in the future. Yeah.
So another thing that I think about with somebody that's going to approach a gallery, or maybe you're going to be in your first show or you're a new artist, is the gallery is going to give you some information, like how they want you to present your work. Yeah. Whether they want you to have it wired on the back or D-rings or how it shows up. And I appreciate it if somebody would take the time to think about that. Because if you've got a piece that's going to be in my show, what you have to realize is there's 40 other people that are also going to bring a piece. And to have it wired or have it presented the way the gallery's asked is huge, because you're then presenting yourself as a professional.
Exactly.
Right.
Because that could be one factor that decides whether you're coming back.
It could be.
Yeah.
And the other thing is if somebody new drops off a piece, I'll spin it around and look on the back and tell them like, hey, Preston, let me show you how I would like for you to have this wired next time.
Right.
And that's a point where you and I are going to engage with each other. And as the person who's putting up the show, when I meet the artists, I'm already kind of sizing them up. Like, can I sell this person's work? Like, how do I sell this person? How's this person going to be? Mm-hmm. And every show, I tell every artist in the show, if you want to come back here during the week and hold the gallery open, if you want to have your friends and family come back, if you want to have a wine and cracker night or something, like hit me up, out of the probably 1,500 people that have shown art at ShockBoxx, maybe 3 have hit me up for that.
Oh, wow.
And I offer it to just about anybody.
Me included.
You included. You know that. You did it. So think about that, and think about the way you present yourself.
Yes.
Like if you think of Theodosia, Marchant, or you, or Scott, or Sarah, or Kim, or the people that did become the program artists, as soon as you walk into the gallery, you're there, and you have a way that you present yourself that's authentic, but you sell your work, and then I can sell you and your work.
Yes.
Right?
And that's, by the way, and I just talked about this too, that's not something that necessarily comes naturally either. It's something that maybe something you have to work on as an artist. You might be antisocial, but sometimes you gotta, by doing this over time, by forcing yourself to do it a little bit, you'll get better at it. It's like a muscle. I mean, even as a kid,
it is.
When I was in class, I was like the most embarrassed child on the planet. Like I was like, if they called on me, I would turn beet red and just get freaked out. I got so angry with myself for getting so anxious or anxiety ridden that I was like, I'm going to force myself to be the first person to raise my hand. So I would be the first person, no matter what it was, raise my hand, teacher would call on me, and I got it out of my system.
Get it
and
over
I was
with.
done, and then I was just calm the rest of the class. But that taught me to be able to do that and to develop that muscle, which you have to do that as an artist, because you can't talk about your work at all. How are you supposed to sell it? Or how are you supposed to talk to a gallery owner about your work? Right.
Yeah. Or talk to the gallery owner. Because if you do have some type of crippling anxiety or some, if I know who you are and I can present whatever that authenticity is, I can help sell that.
Definitely.
But you'll get these artists that during drop off, they'll walk in, set their piece down and walk out. And then you don't see them at the opening, and they show up and pick it up and leave. And sometimes that's a piece that I wanted to engage with in a different way, but I haven't met you. Wendy Lane, who just came for Love Hurts.
Yeah.
She had that beautiful portrait. She flew in from Texas. She was there for the opening and reception both nights, and she showed up in a way to present herself.
And she got first prize.
She got first prize.
Yep, that's right. And she was talking up her work.
Right.
She was great. That's how you're supposed to do it. I mean, that's not how you're supposed to do it, but like there are other avenues, like you said. If you're developing that muscle, talk to the gallery owner. Just say, look, I'm a little shy. This is something about my piece that you can maybe promote.
Yeah, I like to think about, like I always go back to Emerald Paget, and I'll put Sarah in that category. If you think about the first time you met them, versus how they present themselves and how they feel at the gallery now. Both of them very much are at home at the gallery, and it's a cool.
Well, they've no pun intended, but they've come out of the box a little bit, come out of their shell. Yeah. No, it's good. This segues a little bit. I know we've been talking about other artists. We've been talking about you and your kind of origin as an artist. What would you say that you've developed over the years? Like I have my own. What's like a secret weapon of yours? This could be something like your diet. It could be, I'm not an addict anymore. What's something that keeps you, working at like tip top shape, keeps you creating, gives you the energy and the focus that you need to be able to do what you do? Most of the people, let's rephrase it. A lot of the people that I know, a lot of the artists I know that are actually doing something coming up in our world, it's because they have a daily practice that they're doing.
Right.
It's not something they just turn on from time to time. They've developed something that works for them. Is there anything that works for you that has kind of helped you throughout the process of not only being an artist, but a gallery owner?
Sure. Doubt me. Please doubt me.
Doubt you?
Please tell me that you think I can't do it.
Oh, nice.
Right? Give me something to fight. Right? for me, whether it was getting sober, whether it was building that first skateboard ramp, going back to grad school. Like I remember when I made the decision to go back to grad school and become a therapist, some of my colleagues, in the waiting table industry or restaurant management industry, like,
we share that.
Why would you do that? You're going to get all this student loan debt. You can't do that. Like, you can't do that. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Watch.
The naysayers.
So, I know you paint daily, or I know, Scott is in his studio daily, or Sarah's in her studio daily. I'm a psychologist daily, or I'm a gallery owner daily. And there's a part of my brain that is happy when it's trying to figure something out, when it's trying to hack something.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So even the explosion that happened on Cyprus with the gym naming us in that lawsuit, thank you.
Right.
Because I don't know what that
got you fired up, man.
Fired me up.
Yeah.
And we're going to be stronger and better for it.
Speaking
we're going
of
to transform something for it. And that, if we then talk about my art practice, my mom used to say, she was a painter, and she used to say, like, she loved painting because it was always so peaceful. Like, she always loved to paint when she was peaceful. I am in no way, shape, or form anywhere near feeling like painting if I'm feeling peaceful.
Yeah.
Like, if I have
I hear you, man.
feelings, I'm going to write them out, man. I paint when I'm agitated. Like, if you look, especially at like the funeral party stuff, right? Yeah. Like, there's just this like, they're just events, right? Like, I want to crawl all over the canvas and make a mess and cross out lines and go back over them. And like, there's something that's definitely moving through me when I do that. But my creative process involves irritation.
Oh my God.
For sure.
Me too, man. I think painting has saved my life. It's not because, it just can't. I mean, yeah, it calms me down about 3 hours into it when I've gotten all my demons out. But I probably wouldn't be here today if I didn't have that as an outlet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can relate to that.
Yeah, for sure. We kind of talked about this a little bit, but what's one thing that you tell young Mike, coming up now? Something you've learned in the process.
I would tell younger Mike to stop worrying about what anybody thinks about him. I mean, that was, especially if I go back to those formative years of junior high and high school and shortly thereafter, I was just so riddled with trying to fit in. You know, and anybody from back then that's listening, they might be like, well, you did fit in.
On the surface.
Yep. It didn't feel that way. And what the part of me that wasn't fitting in was the part of me that I didn't even know how to show to the world, or I was, I was afraid if I, like if you make it about my art, right? Like, had I whipped out the girl in the pink dress, when I was 17, like, I don't know how well that would have flown, and now being a psychologist and an artist and somebody who can put all of that out there, I would have been so much better off as a developing human had I had the balls to put that out there then, and I talk about that a lot with clients is like, if you think about it, when you're 3 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old, 6 years old, you're not self-conscious.
No.
Like, if you feel like laughing, you laugh. If you feel like crying, you cry. Like, you just go for it,
Yep.
But there's a moment in every single one of our lives when we sell out.
Yeah.
Like, we're the first person that we like betray in that way. And maybe something horrible happened that caused that. Or maybe it's as simple as like, in 5th grade at the end of the year, the coolest thing in the world was Kiss. Yeah.
Right.
And over that break and heading back into school in September, you finally get that Kiss lunchbox, and you're walking to school with your Kiss lunchbox, and all your boys are like, dude, Kiss is lame. Yeah. Like, we're all about Motley Crue now.
Right. They wear makeup, bro.
Yeah. And so you just like throw your Kiss lunchbox in the bushes and be like, yeah, totally, it's lame.
Yeah, right.
Rather than saying
and
like,
then
fuck you.
Part of you is crying.
Yeah. Rather than saying like, fuck you, I still like Kiss.
Yeah.
And like stand up for what you believe in. Because the reality is your buddies would probably be like, okay, well, we think it's lame, but you can still walk to school with us.
Right.
Stay in the game. And
that's so hard when you're developing. Mm-hmm. But it's also, we carry that through to adulthood too.
For sure.
We're still trying to fit in all the time. Luckily, I think you and I and a lot of artists, I rebelled against that. And I was like, oh yeah, watch this, and I did use that to fuel my fire. But I think everybody has that side of them in there. And sometimes it just with certain people has been beaten down. I'm drawn to that. Yeah. Right. There's examples of it. And a lot of times it comes from music more than anything else. Yeah. So if I'm
wanting to get inspired, I will watch interviews with Dave Grohl.
For sure. I was just going to say Kurt Cobain.
Kurt Cobain, yeah. but Dave Grohl or Jack White.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Those guys are so respectful of history.
Yes.
And they know where they're coming from. They know Jack White knows why he's doing what he's doing because he knows who did it. Like he can get it all back to Robert Johnson.
Definitely.
And the level of risk that those guys are willing to take, the level of professionalism, like when they finally do, they'll put it out at risk.
Yeah.
But like if you look at Jack White, when he puts out the finished product, like that dude has turned over every rock, every stone. He's so complete. But I draw inspiration from their willingness to just to create musically. Like a guy it seems like singing. You used to sing, right?
Yeah, I did.
So I don't know that I would ever publicly sing. Like even when I was drunk as a skunk, I never even did karaoke one time. Like it's so frightening to me. But when I see a singer like Conor Oberst or Lucinda Williams, or even like the stuff that I love to talk about, Sturgill Simpson, right? Like the stuff he's doing right now, where he just turned country music on its head or its ear. There's such a vulnerability in standing on the edge of a stage. It appears that there's a vulnerability in standing on the edge of a stage singing.
Oh, there is.
You're like, oh my God. Like if that person's willing to do that, and then the way I feel when I see that happen, that's what I try to do when I paint. Like when I did the funeral party, I wanted to somehow make an art show that conveyed to you that I was standing on the edge of a stage having a nervous breakdown, and I didn't
the
care
immediacy
if you
of
saw
it.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, that's powerful. It's funny because you just made me think of something that I say to myself that might be a little bit of a fallacy or just an incomplete picture. But I always think when you're creating art, you should never think about where it's going, or you should never think about the critics or the people who are going to see it. It should be all pure and just an expression for yourself, right? I think that is true.
Totally agree.
I think that's true. But I think I just saw a different level that I've never seen before. The little fuck you aspect of it. Sure. Of like, I'm going to show you. So maybe it's a subconscious thing, but in the background there, part of it is maybe I was stifled at 5 years old. I was stifled at 6 years old. Look what I'm doing now.
And look at my paintings specifically, like they look like those of a 5 or 6 year old. I learned it from, I don't know if you were standing there when we had the conversation. I know Scott Meskel was there. When Dennis Dugan did his solo show. Yeah. It was so complete. It was so like tight and put together. But Dennis also, he didn't necessarily need to sell those works that month to make his mortgage. And so he priced it in a way that the price didn't matter, right? And he just wanted you to have the work, connect to the work, not have the work. Those was the work he was going to show. And Scott priced his show that way. And he also made the work for his show in that fashion. Yeah. Like, I don't care if you buy this or if you don't buy this. Yeah. This is just what I have to say right now. And to have the luxury to do that, like I'm just going to say this thing and I'll make a living somehow, right? Is awesome. Sure. Right. And then there's the other artists, like let's talk about everyone listening that's maybe trying to sell art, you are a great
or
example.
Trying to pay their mortage by selling their art.
I tell people to follow you, like that. Those artists that are trying to break into just making a living as an artist, like the best model is one that you're doing right now. Like you make a lot of work. You have a daily presence on several art sales websites and social media. Yeah. You make big, large, beautiful works that a collector would buy that has the kind of money to buy, a $5,000 or $6,000 piece of art. But you've got an entry point of like $40 or $80 or
the gateway
$100.
drug.
The gateway drug. Yeah. And I watch it as a gallery owner now, where you'll have somebody that comes, like everybody that shows up at an art show probably wants to buy something. Yeah. And if we just price them all out, they're not going to buy anything. But if they can buy a piece of yours for $40 or $80 or $100 and meet you and put it on their wall and see you at the next art show, there's a different feeling when you have original art on your house and you know the artist who made it.
That's so true.
And then they're going to want another one.
And it's the long game.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how many people that I've had, collectors who bought a small piece, I have my micro paintings. Mm-hmm. They bought something for $80 and they've since bought 3, 4, 5, 6 other pieces.
Right.
So maybe you have a collector and a friend for life. Whereas if you automatically price those people out of the market, they might not ever look at you again. Mm-hmm. And also, I think there's a collector out there or a person, an art lover who hasn't bought anything yet. They feel a little bit intimidated when they go into a gallery.
Right.
Like they feel like it's inaccessible. Right. There's like an elitism to it. And when everything's priced at that level, there's no way in hell they're going to take that chance.
Right.
So it's important to have some accessible pieces.
I think that's one of the powerful things about ShockBoxx. And it even goes back to that New York Times article about these artist-run galleries, like off the beaten path, smaller galleries. I got a piece of feedback.
Like the co-ops, right?
Well, not even a collective. No, I mean, ShockBoxx is an artist-run gallery, right? We've got some people in Hermosa that they've been to every show. And this one guy, he came to one of the first shows and he said, Mike, I really appreciate the vibe at ShockBoxx because I'm intimidated when I go to a fancy art gallery or when I go to a museum. I don't know how to look at the art. I don't want to talk to the artists because they all seem so cool standing over there in the corner. I'm like,
and really, they're scared shit.
They're in the corner because they're having panic attacks, and
that's why I used to have to drink when I went to my shows. Yeah.
They're wearing all black because they can't be bothered with a decision.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Right. And what he appreciates about ShockBoxx is that you guys are all there, and then it's like, hey man, this is Preston. Hey man, this is Scott. Like, meet this person.
Yeah.
And so he's at every show, and he's bought a couple pieces, and he was actually in Intergalactic. So he went from an art patron to like he submitted some stuff and was in Intergalactic. Awesome. So
that's what drew me to what you were doing too. Like I loved the vibe of ShockBoxx. Mm-hmm. It just felt like here's a gallery that's doing something different. Mm-hmm. It's like a gallery of the people, by the people, for the people, for the artists.
Well, right.
And man, I just saw so much potential with your gallery, and you've lived up to it.
Thanks. Yeah. I mean, I think it has awesome. It's the right size, and we can afford to be there now. So we can also then afford to play around. Like there's definitely like a lightness and a playfulness and a snarkiness to what we're doing, like with the show coming up called Not an Art Fair. I mean, there's obviously, we would all love to kind of anchor an art fair and sell 50 pieces, at the highest price possible and play that whole game. Like who wouldn't want to do that, but the entry point for that's pretty difficult.
It is.
And so to have a show called Not an Art Fair is fun. We've always played around with the idea of like, it's not for sale anyways.
Yeah.
Might be a good name for an art show. Yeah.
Well, cool, man. I feel like, have we left anything out? Is there anything you know what? Well, first of all, obviously, how can people discover you or find you online on the internets or and ShockBoxx?
Yeah, well, you can find ShockBoxx on the internets at shockboxxproject.com. Find them the same way on Instagram, shockboxxproject.com. And you can find me at Mike Collins Art, whether that's .com or .instagram or
through ShockBoxx. Awesome. Well, do you feel like we left anything out? Is there anything you want to leave? A little morsel?
I feel like we've had a very lengthy conversation.
We'll do a part 2 sometime.
Awesome, man. I'd just like to say to anybody that's still listening, like if you're thinking about getting in the art game, like if you're a newer person looking, a place like ShockBoxx, and I'm sure a lot of communities have a place like that, like send a respectful email, to the gallery manager, the gallery owner, and tell them who you are, because most, it's kind of like a college professor, right? Like we're doing this because we believe in something and we want to watch people grow.
Right.
And so hit us up.
Definitely. Yeah. Take that step for sure. Well, thanks, man. I really appreciate you being on the podcast.
Thanks.
All right. This has been the Living Artist Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I just want you to know that I appreciate you being here, and I'm grateful to be in your ears. Your art and creative life on this planet is meaningful, so thank you for sharing it with me. If you like this podcast, whatever platform you're listening to it on, please subscribe and share it with your friends. You can also leave me a positive review to show your support. This helps me to reach more people with the algorithmic magic and keep the show going strong. If you want to see more of what I do and check out the art that I create, you can visit my website at www.pmsartwork.com or follow me on social media everywhere at PMS Artwork. That's it for now. See you back here next time.